Hello, this is Julius from Basic Financials. I'm just going to do a little bit of a video on the budget that happened a couple of weeks ago. So this is March 2021. There was quite a lot of talk about various things, as there usually is, on things that might change. That nearly every year they talk about normally the investment industry talk about the fact that the chancellors may well scrap or reduce benefits for paying into pension contributions. Personally, I got a feeling that's so that people will start paying lots of money into pension contributions before the budget. But as within probably the last 5 years I've heard this said, it didn't happen. It may well happen in the future, but who knows? Anyway, so no changes on the pension contributions relief. So you still get basically if you put in £8,000 into a pension scheme, a private pension scheme, and the government will add £2,000 to top it up to £10,000, and if you're a higher rate taxpayer, you get another £2,000 tax relief. So you'll still cost you £6,000 to get £10,000 into your pension fund for a private pension. So that's still very useful, and that's the sort of thing that the investment industry keeps saying every year that the budget happens, that he's going to change it. Anyway, that didn't change. The main thing in the budget, really, or two things I suppose, was the freezing of allowances and thresholds for income tax. So that's going to, although that probably doesn't seem like much at the moment, in 5 years' time that could make quite a big difference, especially if interest rates go up, and therefore maybe salary rates go up. That's great anyway, doesn't it? But it will bring a lot of people into tax that aren't at the moment, and it will also take people into the higher rate of income tax that aren't at the moment. You might not think about it at the moment, but it will have a difference in 5 years' time. But that's the idea. It's supposed to raise money. And the other big thing is that corporation tax, whereas at the moment it's 19% is corporation tax, that's going to go up to 25%. Now, the headline is it's for companies with profits of more than £250,000. Now, this isn't happening yet. This is happening in 2 years' time. So from 1st of April 2023 it's going to happen. So from then. So the first year end that it would affect, if you've got a year end of 31st of March, it would be 31st of March 2024, then your profits will be taxed at 25%. And as I say, the headline is that, it's only for companies that have profits more than £250,000. Well, it's not quite as straightforward as that, because if your company has profits of less than £50,000, yep, you still pay at 19%. But for that portion of profits between £50,000 and £250,000, you're actually going to be paying at a rate of more than 25%. And that's because by the time you get to £250,000, you'll be paying at 25%. So in that period, in that portion between 50 and 250, so that you get those profits taxed at more than the 19%, so that by the time you get to 250,000 it's at 25%, you're going to actually be paying at more. It's called the marginal rate. We've had this before, when it used to be corporation tax for small companies was at a lower rate than for larger companies. So it's the marginal rate, so it's something to watch out for, and also remember, importantly, that your profits, even especially in a small company, your taxable profits are before paying out dividends. So where you've got the situation where you pay a small salary and large dividends, your profits are going to be probably more than £50,000 if there are a number of you in there. And you're doing okay, because those salaries will come off, but they're small. Dividends don't come off for tax purposes, so your profits are going to be probably in that marginal rate area. So So in other words, it's a bit more expensive than it sounded. So that's the main thing to watch out for people who own companies, especially small companies. And the rates and thresholds staying the same. The personal allowance is going to be 12,570, so it's gone up a tiny little bit. The higher rate tax will start at 37,700 taxable income. So in other words, if you've got basic circumstances, you've got your personal allowance of 12,570. And then your basic rate band is 37,700. So in other words, if your income is below 50,270, then you won't pay at higher rate. If your income is higher than that, then you'll pay at higher rate, and that's going to stay the same for the next 5 years. The tax rates are not changing, which is good. Doesn't complicate things too much. So it's still 20% basic rate for income up to that 50,270. 40% for income between that basic rate and 150,000, and 45% for income more than 150,000. Something to bear in mind also is if your income's more than 100,000, you start to lose your personal allowance for £1 for every £2 that is over the 100,000. So by the time you get to 2 times 12,570 plus 100,000, by the time you get to that, then you will have lost your personal allowance altogether. So that makes it a bit more expensive as well. National insurance thresholds, rates are the same, so 12% for employees, the basic one, then 2% if you're over that basic rate threshold. Tax threshold coincides with that. And then for employers, it's still 13.8% on everything. Not everything, because you've got a starting bit which where you don't pay. It's about £8,500 to £9,000 where you don't pay national insurance. But you can look up those rates on the gov website. I think that's probably enough. There's quite a lot of help that's being extended for coronavirus, as we hoped. The self-employment income support scheme, CEASE, is a tiny little bit more generous, but not a lot. And people were hoping that you might be able to do it for directors of companies with small salaries and paying themselves in dividends. That hasn't happened. And then there's a slight extension or slight increase in the eligibility because people who were self-employed during 2019-20 will be able to do it as well, as long as they filled in a tax return anyway and filed it by budget day. So that is slightly better than it was before, but it's not hugely better. There are 2 more grants that are going to be payable for that, so watch out for that. Again, on the Gov website you can find out all about that. And the coronavirus job retention scheme, that's extended. Again, it's being phased out gradually, but it's still helping. And another thing that's coming in is some new loans that are going to be available. They're going to be difficult to get, I imagine, because the government aren't backing the whole lot. And as I've mentioned before in other videos, if the banks have any exposure whatsoever, then they don't like lending unless it's absolute guaranteed. And as the government's only getting back 80% of it, then the bank's still exposed to 20%, so they're going to probably ask for personal guarantees, which they probably shouldn't do. But yeah, they're going to be more difficult to get than the bounce back loans, for example, where the banks just dished them out because they weren't exposed in any way. Anyway, I won't go any more on about banks. I think that's probably enough. There's lots of information on the web, on the internet. I'm trying to look at government websites if you can, because you know things are going to be right there. And they might be skewed slightly in their in the advice and the guidance, but it's normally pretty good. I hope that helps. There's obviously a lot more in the budget, but I won't go into all of that because we're here all day. So anyway, I hope that helps, and if you could like and subscribe as usual, and I'll see you for another video sometime. Thanks for listening.